I found out I had cancer in the worst possible way, alone. And the first thing I thought of wasn't fear. It wasn't treatment. It was my children, the ones I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. So I reached out, but what I got back? Nothing in this world could have prepared me for that. Hey, sweet soul, thank you for joining me. Before we dive in, tell me, where are you watching from? I love knowing where my stories travel. Drop your city in the comments, and if this story moves something in you, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. It started with a cough. Not the kind that rattles your ribs or makes folks stare at you in the store. No, it was gentler than that. Like a quiet reminder from your body that something isn't right, even if everything looks fine on the outside. I ignored it, of course. I'm old. Things creak, things ache. I didn't think much of it. But when the cough came with a sharp pull in my back, and then when I couldn't get up from bed one morning without gasping for air, I knew. It wasn't age, it was something else. I went to the clinic because I couldn't face the hospital. That old building downtown where I watched my husband Jack fade away, room 514. Blue walls, the smell of bleach and boiled coffee. The clinic was small, cleaner, quieter, a place where bad news still felt soft. But that day, there was nothing soft about what I heard. The doctor, young, sharp-eyed, probably not more than 30, looked like he hated this part of the job. He said my name gently, like he was trying to cradle it. "Ms. Elkins," he began, "we've reviewed all the scans. There's no easy way to say this." I knew then, even before he finished. Cancer, stage 4, metastatic, bones, spine. Uncurable, he added carefully, but manageable. We can discuss palliative care, comfort-focused treatment. I didn't hear the rest. My ears started buzzing. It felt like I had left my body, like I was sitting outside the clinic watching some other woman get her death sentence. But it wasn't someone else. It was me. I nodded through the rest of the appointment. I asked no questions. I took the folder they handed me, a bland, beige folder with neat papers that quietly whispered, "You don't have long." I walked out into the parking lot and I just stood there for 15 whole minutes, breathing, counting, listening to the wind in the trees and the distant cry of a baby across the street. Because when you hear that your body is giving up on you, you start noticing the world more. The color of leaves, the taste of air, even the ache in your knees becomes precious. I didn't call anyone. Not that day, not the next. I sat in my little apartment, fed the cat, made tea I didn't drink, stared at the wall. I opened old photo albums, some ones I hadn't touched in years, and ran my fingers across the pages like I was trying to touch another life. There was Camille in her yellow Easter dress, Royce in that oversized tuxedo from his school prom, Jack with that crooked smile and oil-stained hands, always pretending he didn't love having his picture taken when he clearly did. And then me, younger, fuller, smiling, always smiling. I didn't recognize myself, and it wasn't just the age, it was the loss. You see, Jack died 10 years ago. Heart failure. Quick, sudden. 1 minute he was shuffling through the kitchen looking for the pepper grinder, the next he was on the floor. By the time the ambulance came, he was already gone. And the kids, they came rushing, yes. Camille first, always the caretaker. Royce later, angry, blaming traffic, but something cracked in that grief, something deep. They started fighting over his things, the car, the insurance, the house, and when I wouldn't pick sides, when I told them I wasn't going to let them tear apart what was left of their father, they turned on me, accused me of favoritism, of hiding money, of playing victim. Camille called me manipulative. Royce called me selfish. And then silence. Years of silence. I tried. I swear I did. Letters, voicemails, birthday cards for their kids, all unanswered. Eventually I stopped. Not because I stopped loving them, but because you can't keep bleeding into a door that never opens. So I buried that part of me, and I went on. Until now. Now that I had months left, maybe weeks, suddenly nothing else mattered but that door. Even if it stayed shut. I had to knock. I thought about calling, but I couldn't bear the thought of hearing that cold, distant tone, the kind that says, "Why are you calling me? What do you want?" So I wrote, handwritten, on the same stationery Jack gave me for our 25th anniversary. Light blue, thick paper, gold edges. I kept it all these years for something important. This felt important. Camille, I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if you even care anymore. But I'm writing because I need you to know I'm dying. It's cancer, late stage. Doctors don't give it long. I'm not writing to ask for anything, not for forgiveness, not even for a visit. I'm writing because I don't want to leave this world without saying, I love you. That's all, Mama. I wrote the same to Royce with his name at the top and son at the bottom. Simple. No guilt. No begging. Just love. I sealed the envelopes, kissed them like prayers, and walked them to the mailbox myself. The mailman smiled and said, "Pretty day, huh?" I nodded. Didn't tell him it might be one of my last. The days that followed were slow and full of waiting. Not the anxious kind, more like sitting on a bench watching for a bus that might not come. Every phone buzz made my heart skip. Every envelope in the mailbox made me hold my breath. I cleaned the apartment top to bottom, polished old picture frames, took out the good teacups, as if, by some miracle, they might walk through the door, but they didn't. The first letter came back unopened. Camille's. Return to sender. Same handwriting, same address. But someone had scrawled across the envelope, "Do not contact." I sat in my chair for a long time holding it, reading it over and over. Do not contact. Like I was a bill collector, a stranger, a stain. I thought maybe Royce would be different. He was always the softer one, the emotional one. But no letter came, no call, no reply, just silence. And that hurt more than the diagnosis ever did, because when your body betrays you, you can curse it. But when your children do, there are no words, just ache and shame and that awful yawning emptiness where family used to be. I thought I would cry. I didn't. Instead, I opened the drawer, pulled out my wedding ring, and slipped it on again. It no longer fit my finger right, too loose now, after the weight loss, but I wore it anyway, because it reminded me of the last time I felt truly, completely loved, and I needed that reminder, now more than ever. I began to write again, not to them, to myself, in a little spiral-bound notebook I bought from the dollar store. Each morning I wrote, "I'm still here. I still have something to give, even if no one wants it." And at night I wrote, "If tomorrow is my last, let me meet it with grace. Not fear, not anger, just peace." But peace is hard to find when you know your own blood has forgotten your name. Still, I wasn't done. Not yet. Because if they wouldn't come to me, then I would go to them. And if they shut the door again, then at least I'd know that I had tried. I thought the hardest part was dying. But I was wrong. The hardest part was knocking and realizing no one would open the door. It took me 3 more days to gather the strength. Not just physical strength, though Lord knows, even walking to the corner store had begun to leave me winded, but the emotional kind. The kind of strength you need to peel off 10 years of silence, shame, and pride, and face the very people who made it all grow. But I knew if I didn't do it now, I never would. So I packed a bag, not for a trip, just in case. A clean scarf, tissues, a copy of the medical report the doctor printed for me, and the ring Jack gave me when I said yes in 1974. I put on my navy coat, the one with the soft lining and silver buttons, the one I wore to Jack's funeral, and I called a cab. The driver was a young girl, maybe 20, chewing gum like it was a full-time job. She didn't ask questions, didn't play music, didn't talk. Thank God. I wasn't in the mood for talk. Camille. Older than the last time I saw her, but still beautiful in that sharp-edged, high cheekbone way. Her hair was pulled back and she wore yoga pants and a hoodie like she'd been lounging. She didn't smile, she didn't blink, she just stared. And for a moment, I thought she might close the door again. Instead, she said, "Mom." That word, I hadn't heard it in a decade. It nearly dropped me to my knees. I just sat back and stared out the window at streets I used to know by heart. Storefronts had changed. Trees had grown. Some homes were gone completely. Time doesn't care who you are. It just moves. Camille's house hadn't changed much. Same gray siding, same cracked walkway, same chipped white mailbox with her husband's last name still stenciled on it. Powell, though they divorced years ago. I stood at the gate for a full minute before opening it. My legs felt like lead. The air smelled like overcooked chicken and dust. I climbed the 3 porch steps and knocked. 3 times. Soft. Then again. Harder. I heard movement inside. Footsteps. A pause. Then the curtain shifted behind the glass, and then the door opened. "Camille," I said, my voice shaking, "can we talk?" She hesitated, then stepped back. 5 minutes. The inside of the house smelled like lavender spray and coffee. It was clean, impersonal, like a home staged for sale. I sat on the edge of the couch, clutching my purse. She stood, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "You got my letter," I said. She nodded. "I did." "You didn't answer." I didn't know what to say. I looked at her. Really looked. Her face had changed, soft around the eyes, but harder in the jaw. She looked like a woman who had taught herself not to cry. I just wanted to see you," I said, "and to tell you myself I'm sick, baby, real sick." "I know," she said. "You wrote it." Her tone wasn't cold, just brittle, like if she let herself feel anything, she'd break. I reached into my bag, pulled out the doctor's letter. She didn't take it. She just stared at it like it was a piece of poison. "You waited 10 years to show up dying," she said finally. Do you know how that sounds?" My chest tightened. "I didn't wait. I tried. You stopped answering." "I stopped answering because you stopped being a mother the day Dad died." Her words sliced through me like ice. "I was grieving, Camille. We all were." "No," she snapped. You hid. You picked sides. You let Royce lie about me. You let us tear each other apart and then acted like you had no part in it." "That's not true," I whispered. "It is to me." Silence. A long, aching silence. I looked around the living room. No photos of me, no trace of family past, just polished wood, gray cushions, a decorative cross above the fireplace. Everything looked curated, empty, like me. "I'm not here to blame you," I said softly. "I'm here to say goodbye. Or hello. Whichever you'll allow." Camille blinked. Her throat moved like she was swallowing something back. "You're really dying?" she asked. I nodded. She sat, far from me, on the other end of the couch like I might be contagious. "How long?" "Months," I said. "Maybe less." She looked down at her lap, then whispered, "I don't know how to feel about that." I didn't answer. There wasn't anything to say. After a long pause, she stood. "I have to pick up the kids," she said. "I didn't plan for this." I stood too, slowly. "I understand." She walked me to the door, didn't hug me, didn't promise to call, just opened it and stood aside. As I stepped out, I turned. "Camille?" She looked at me. "I never stopped loving you." She didn't respond, just closed the door, softly but firmly. I stood on the porch, cold wind curling around my ankles. Then I walked back to the street and called another cab. This time I sat in silence. No tears, just silence. Royce lived across town. I didn't plan on seeing them both in one day, but after that, I didn't want to wait anymore. I told the driver a new address. She didn't ask why I changed my mind. Bless her. Royce's neighborhood was rougher, more overgrown, weeds creeping up fences, cars parked too close together. His house was a red brick duplex with chipping paint and a sagging porch. I walked up and knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Finally, footsteps. The door opened with a jerk. Royce stared at me. And then he laughed. A bitter, one-note sound. "Well, look what the cat dragged in," he said. "Hi, Royce." "You lost?" "No." "Then why are you here?" "I came to talk." He stepped outside, pulling the door halfway shut behind him. "You dying?" he said, eyes narrowing. "That what this is?" I froze. "Yes." He scoffed. "Figures. You only crawl back when you need something." "I don't need anything," I said. "I just wanted—" He held up a hand. "Nope. You don't get to want anything. Not anymore." That stung, but I kept my voice steady. "I wanted to say I'm sorry," I said. "For what?" he shot back. "For blaming me when Camille said I stole from Dad? For believing her over me? For freezing me out when I told the truth?" I didn't know what to believe. "You believed what was easy." He stepped closer. "You let us rot, Ma. You let us rot. And now that your time's almost up, you want to be the victim?" "I'm not—" "Yes, you are." I stepped back, because the fury in his eyes wasn't just anger. It was pain, deep, rancid, untouched for a decade, and I had no words to fix it. "I'm sorry," I whispered again. He stared, then said, "Go die in peace, Ma, but don't drag me into it." And he went inside. Slamming the door so hard the porch shook. I stood there for a long, long time. Then I sat on the top step, watched the sky turn pale orange. I could have called another cab. I could have left right away, but something in me needed to sit, to feel it, the finality of it all. I had tried, I had knocked, I had looked them in the eyes, and they still chose distance, so now the rest was mine, mine alone. But what they didn't know, what they would one day remember, maybe too late, was this. The dying woman they turned away? She wasn't broken. She was free. The silence of my apartment wrapped around me like a cold sheet the moment I stepped back inside. The door clicked shut behind me with a soft finality that seemed to echo louder than it should have. I dropped my purse on the small side table near the entryway and stood there for a long while, not moving, not thinking, just existing. The walls looked the same, beige, slightly scuffed. My cat, Poppy, blinked up at me from her perch by the window, tail flicking once as if to say, "So? How did it go?" I didn't answer. I took off my coat and hung it carefully, deliberately, like I was still someone who lived by routine. Then I sat at the kitchen table. I didn't cry. I didn't even sigh. There was no sadness left in me, only space. The visits to Camille and Royce hadn't brought closure. If anything, they had opened wounds I didn't know still existed. Old, jagged rips under the surface that pulsed with the memory and guilt. But something inside me settled. Not because it was okay. It wasn't. Not because I was forgiven. I wasn't. But because I had done the one thing I promised myself I would do before the end came. I tried. And that, I told myself, would have to be enough. The next day, I woke up before dawn. Not because of pain, not because of coughing fits, just because. I watched the light shift across the ceiling, the soft, pale gold of early morning sliding across my walls like a silent visitor. I made myself a pot of chamomile tea. It sat untouched on the stove. I boiled an egg, didn't eat it. I cleaned out a drawer I hadn't touched in 5 years, full of mismatched socks, old reading glasses, expired coupons, and a small notepad that still smelled faintly of lavender. I opened windows to let in the spring air. I whispered thank you into the silence just in case anyone or anything was listening. That night, I took out Jack's Bible, the one with his name embossed on the leather cover. It had that scent, old pages and reverence, a smell you don't forget. I turned to Psalms, read a few lines. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. It hit different now. Not as comfort, not as promise, just as recognition. Yes, he was close, but so was the end. I started preparing, not for death, not in the dramatic way. No handwritten will on the table, no big speeches, just little things. I labeled boxes, threw away expired medicine, wrote a list of passwords on a note card and taped it under the silverware drawer. I wrote a note to the building manager to let him know I wouldn't be renewing the lease. And I told Tanya, the only neighbor who ever checked on me, that if she didn't see me for more than 2 days, she should knock. She nodded, eyes full of questions, but she didn't ask. Then, on the 3rd morning, the letter came. I found it in the mailbox, wedged between a bank statement and a supermarket flyer. No return address. But the handwriting made me freeze on the spot. It was Royce's. I walked back to the apartment slowly, heart thumping a little louder than I'd like to admit. I sat down in my chair, the one with the cushion just the way I like it, and opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet. No dear mom. No love Royce. Just words. Scrawled in a hand I remembered from spelling tests and birthday cards. I thought about what you said. I didn't want to. I wanted to stay angry, but then I saw Camille cry. Not in front of you. After. She didn't want you to see. I guess we both wanted you to feel the hurt we'd carried, and we succeeded, but it didn't make us feel better. I don't know what comes next. But maybe, just maybe, we can talk again before it's too late. I sat there for a long time, holding that paper like it was fragile. Like it might disappear if I breathed too hard. And slowly, without even realizing it, I smiled. Not a full smile, just the start of one. A possibility. But the letter didn't end there. No. Royce had added a line at the bottom, hastily scribbled, crooked, almost like he changed his mind as he wrote it. By the way, Camille said she's thinking about taking the kids to the lake house next week. The one Dad left. She asked if you'd consider coming. I stared at that sentence for what felt like hours. The lake house? The place where we used to roast marshmallows and argue over card games? The place Jack built with his own hands? The place we hadn't set foot in since the funeral. I didn't know how to feel. Was it a trap? A guilt trip? Or was it real? Was it a bridge? Even if the planks were rotted and shaking, was it still a bridge? I folded the letter slowly, placed it on the table, and whispered, "Jack, what do I do?" Poppy meowed softly from the window, like even she knew this wasn't simple, because nothing ever is, not when history is long and wounds run deep. I didn't make a decision that day. I went to sleep with the letter on the nightstand, light off, hands crossed over my chest like prayer. And that night, I dreamed of Jack. He was standing on the dock of the lake house, barefoot in his old flannel, smiling, saying nothing. But I knew what it meant. In the morning, I pulled out my small green suitcase, the one I swore I'd never use again. I started packing, not with hope, not with certainty, just with maybe. And sometimes, maybe is all you get. I took the early train, the one that creaks as it rounds the curves out of town, shuddering like an old man with tired bones. It was nearly empty. Just me, a woman in a tracksuit reading a romance novel, and a college kid with headphones so big they looked like earmuffs. I sat near the window, watched the fields slide by, watched the houses grow farther apart, watched the trees thicken. The lake house wasn't far, just 2 hours by train and a cab ride through woods that always smelled like wet leaves and pine, but after 10 years it felt like crossing into another life. I hadn't seen the lake house since Jack's funeral. We'd all gathered there that night after the burial. Me, the kids, some friends from the plant, a few distant cousins who drank too much and cried too loud. I remember the porch light flickering like it wasn't sure if it wanted to stay on. I remember Royce getting into an argument with Camille in the kitchen about something petty, mashed potatoes or wine or who was supposed to do the dishes. I remember saying, "This isn't the time," and how neither of them even looked at me when I said it. I remember going to bed early, burying my face in Jack's pillow and pretending he was still there. I never came back after that, until now. The cab let me out at the edge of the gravel drive. The trees were still tall, still whispering secrets to each other like they always had. The house stood quiet and proud, white siding, blue shutters, wraparound porch. The paint had faded and the flower beds were choked with weeds, but it was still beautiful. Still home. At least it had been. Camille was on the porch when I arrived. She didn't wave, didn't call out, just stood and waited. I walked slowly, suitcase rattling over the gravel behind me. When I reached the steps, she opened the screen door. "Hey," she said. I nodded. She held the door open longer than necessary. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she added. "Neither was I." The inside of the house smelled like lemon cleaner and old wood. Memories lived in every corner. The crack in the hallway floor Jack never fixed. The picture of the lake at sunset, Royce's first photo from high school, still hanging slightly crooked near the dining room. The coat rack I bought at a flea market in 1994. And there, in the kitchen window, was the tiny blue vase where I used to keep cut wildflowers from the trail. Empty now, but still there. Camille led me to the guest room without speaking. The bed was made, clean linens, a folded towel. She turned to go. "Camille," I said. She stopped. "Thank you." She nodded, didn't turn around. Later that evening, we ate on the porch. Me, Camille, Royce, and 2 of Camille's kids, Micah and Joni. They were taller now, teenagers, quiet, polite. They called me ma'am instead of grandma. I didn't correct them. I was grateful just to be acknowledged. We ate grilled chicken and coleslaw. Camille had made cornbread like I used to. It was dry, but I didn't say a word. Royce didn't speak much. He avoided my eyes. But he helped carry dishes back inside. That was something. After dinner, the kids went to the den. Camille poured coffee for herself, poured chamomile tea for me without asking. She sat across from me at the table. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, just heavy. Then she said quietly, "I didn't write back because I didn't believe you." I looked up. "Didn't believe what?" "That you were dying." I smiled a little. "I wish you were right." She set her cup down. "It felt manipulative," she said, "like you only reached out because you knew we'd feel guilty." I let that sit for a moment. "Would you have answered if I wasn't dying?" She didn't answer. Didn't have to. "I didn't come here to make you feel bad," I said. She nodded. "I know." Then, "I didn't ask you to come to the lake house either. Royce did." That surprised me. I'd assumed it was her. He thought maybe if you saw the kids again, it would help. I looked out the window. The lake shimmered in the fading light. I don't know if it helps, I said, but it matters. That night, I couldn't sleep. Too many ghosts. Too many smells that brought Jack's voice echoing back. His laugh, his cough, the way he always tapped the window when he wanted more coffee. I got out of bed, wrapped a shawl around my shoulders, and went to sit on the dock. The moon was high, the water still. I sat on the edge, feet dangling, the cold biting at my ankles. And I wept, not from sadness, from weight. Grief is not just about what's lost, it's about what never got to be healed. I didn't hear Royce approach, but suddenly he was sitting beside me, shoes off, jeans rolled to his calves, just like when he was a boy. I used to fish here every summer, he said. I know, I replied. He handed me a thermos. Tea, still hot. He must have known I was awake. I was cruel, he said. So was I. He nodded. You think we'll ever be okay? I don't know. He took a breath. The kids asked if you were moving in. I laughed softly. They don't even know me. They want to, he said. They just don't know how. Neither do I. We sat in silence. The wind rustled the trees. Somewhere an owl hooted. Then Royce whispered, Do you regret writing those letters? No, I said. I regret waiting so long. He looked at me. I met his eyes. And for the first time in years, I saw my son again. Not the man who yelled, not the bitter adult, but the boy who used to ask me to sing to him when he had nightmares. And something in me loosened. We sat on that dock until the sky began to lighten, and I realized maybe this wasn't the ending. Maybe it wasn't the full reconciliation either. Maybe it was just a start. The next few days at the lake house passed like slow-moving clouds, gentle, quiet, unpredictable. There were no fireworks, no dramatic reconciliations, no sudden tearful hugs, but there was space. And in that space, something started to grow. Not trust, not yet, but presence. And sometimes, that's the first miracle. Camille didn't talk much, but she brought me tea each morning, left it steaming on the table without a word. She didn't wait for a thank you, didn't hover. She just placed it near me and walked away. That was our language now. Small gestures, unspoken bridges. Royce helped me down to the lake every afternoon, not because I asked, because he noticed. And the kids? They started looking me in the eyes. Micah showed me a photo he'd taken on his phone, a blurry sunrise over the water. Looks like something Grandpa Jack would have liked, he said. I smiled. Jack would have loved it, I whispered. He nodded. And in that moment, I saw a flicker of legacy passing through blood like sunlight through stained glass. I spent most afternoons on the porch, watching, breathing, waiting, not for death anymore, just for whatever came next. On the fourth day, Camille handed me a small, sealed envelope. Royce stood behind her, arms crossed. I looked from one to the other. What's this? I asked. Camille cleared her throat. It's about the lake house. My chest tightened. Royce added, We figured since you came and since things are shifting, it was time we talked about it. I opened the envelope. Inside, legal documents, title transfer, ownership forms. At the bottom, 2 signature lines, Camille's and Royce's, already signed. The third, mine, blank. I stared at it, not understanding. Are you selling it? I asked. Camille hesitated. We weren't sure you'd want it kept. It's expensive to maintain, Royce added. Taxes, repairs, it's just sitting here most of the year. It's where your father, I began, but my voice cracked. Camille looked down. We know, she said. That's why we didn't sign anything final. Not without asking you. Royce added, We'd split the proceeds 3 ways. 3. My stomach dropped. 3? Camille and Royce exchanged glances. Then Camille said carefully, We added Megan. My throat went dry. Who's Megan? Royce looked away. She's our half-sister, Camille said. Dad had a daughter from before he met you. We found out 2 years ago there was a DNA test and... Her voice trailed off. She's part of the family now. The air left my lungs. You're telling me that Jack had another child? And you believe it? Camille nodded. She looks just like him. Same laugh, same stories. Royce muttered. Same smile. And you're giving her a share? I whispered. Camille's voice hardened. She's blood. And I'm what? I asked. A memory? No one answered. I stood. The paper trembled in my hands. So that's why you asked me here? No, Camille said quickly. That's not... Royce cut in. It's part of it. Part of it, I repeated. I turned to the window, blinked hard. You wrote me a letter, Royce, said you wanted to talk, to reconnect, and now you want my signature to make a sale cleaner? It's not like that. It feels exactly like that. The room was silent. Even the wind outside had paused. I came here to die in peace, I said, voice low, steady. But peace doesn't live here anymore. Camille stepped forward. Don't do this, Mama. I looked at her. Sharp, cold. You haven't called me that in 10 years. Don't start now, not when it benefits you. She froze. Royce whispered, please. But it was too late. The paper crumpled in my hand. I walked past them, up the stairs to the guest room. I shut the door, locked it, and sat on the bed until the light faded. I didn't sleep that night. Too many thoughts, too much betrayal. Was Megan real? Was the story true? Did it matter? Even if she was Jack's? Why now? Why bring her in like a daughter while I was still here? Still breathing? Still trying? At dawn, I opened the window. The lake was still. Fog clung to the trees like breath on a mirror, and I remembered something Jack once said. You never see the rot until you look under the surface, but it's always been there. I had seen the surface. Now I saw underneath, and I knew what I had to do. At 7:15 the next morning, I packed my suitcase. I folded each item slowly, deliberately. My hands were calm, but my chest was quiet in that dangerous way, like a field just before a tornado touches down. The wind had picked up outside. The lake was choppy now, gray and restless. Even the trees seemed uneasy. I wasn't angry. No, anger was loud. This was quieter, colder, final. I placed the unsigned documents inside a clean envelope, sealed it, and wrote on the front, do what you must, I already have. Then I slid it under Camille's bedroom door. They were still asleep when I left. Or pretending to be. Either way, I didn't say goodbye. I left the mug she'd been giving me tea in every morning. Clean, dried, turned upside down on the kitchen towel. I left the necklace Jack gave me on the nightstand of the guest room. I left my forgiveness on the porch. And I took my dignity with me. At the bottom of the driveway, I stopped, looked back at the house. One last time. The place where I once believed we were all going to grow old together. Where I thought love would always live. Where Jack laughed and built a swing for Camille and Royce learned to fish and I sang gospel hymns while hanging towels out to dry. Now it was just wood, nails, and empty rooms filled with ghosts. Let them sell it. Let them split it. Let them explain it to their children one day, how they chose profit over peace, paperwork over presence, a stranger over the mother who raised them. I took the bus back, cheaper than the train, slower, more honest somehow. It rattled and wheezed and groaned around every curve, like it understood how I felt. I sat near the back, didn't cry, didn't smile, just watched the trees blur past, thinking of everything I hadn't said. When I got home, Poppy meowed at the door like I'd been gone a year. She curled around my ankles while I made tea, while I sat in my chair and watched the steam rise, while I wrote in my journal. They did not choose me, but I choose me, and that will have to be enough. That afternoon I went to the bank. I sat down with a woman named Denise who wore too much perfume and kept calling me Miss Clara in a voice too sweet to be sincere. But I didn't need sincerity. I needed finality. I updated my will, took Camille and Royce off, removed their children, left the lake house to be donated, if it wasn't sold by the time of my passing, left what little savings I had to Tanya, the neighbor who had brought me soup when I had the flu, who once spent 2 hours walking Poppy when I was in the hospital. And I left my story, typed, printed, bound in a red folder, to be read at my memorial if anyone showed up. If not, to be kept at the church office. I left nothing to spite, only to truth. That evening, Tanya came by. She brought pie. Sweet potato, my favorite. We sat in silence while I ate one slice and saved the rest for breakfast. Then I asked her, would you help me plan a goodbye lunch? She blinked. A what? Just something small, for whoever wants to say something kind before they don't have the chance. She nodded slowly. Of course, I'll help with everything. I smiled. For once, I said. I want to write the ending myself. That night, a letter came from Camille, slipped under my apartment door. You left before we could talk. We weren't trying to hurt you. We were trying to understand how you could still love a man who hid a daughter from you. We didn't know how to tell you. We thought we were being fair, but maybe we were just being cruel in a quieter way. If you don't want to talk to us again, I'll understand, but I'll never stop hoping. I read it 3 times, then folded it and placed it with Royce's first letter. Not in forgiveness, not in reconciliation, just in history, because that's what it was now. Not a future, not a present, just a page in the story. I didn't write back, but I did write a final note in my journal that night. They will grieve me when it's convenient, but I will rest knowing I made my peace, even if they refuse to join me in it. The table was set for 8. I didn't expect 8. Truth be told, I expected maybe 2. Tanya, of course, and maybe June from the church choir if her knees weren't acting up again. But I cooked like I used to. Not because I believed they'd come, but because I wanted the room to smell like love just once more. Baked chicken, collard greens with smoked turkey, cornbread that steamed when you tore it, macaroni and cheese made the old way with 3 kinds of cheese and no shortcuts, peach cobbler in the oven, sweet tea in the fridge. I even lit candles. Not because it was fancy, but because light matters, especially at the end. At noon, Tanya arrived first, holding a bouquet of sunflowers and wearing her best dress, the one she usually saved for funerals and church anniversaries. She hugged me like I was still solid, like I wasn't fading. I brought 2 chairs just in case, she said, glancing at the door. I smiled. 2 might be generous. But even as I said it, I hoped. Hoped like a fool. At 12:20, the first knock came, and I nearly dropped the pie. When I opened the door, it wasn't Camille, it wasn't Royce, it was Joni, Camille's daughter. Tall, thin, with her mother's cheekbones and her father's nervous eyes, she clutched a container of store-bought cookies like it was a peace treaty. Hi, she said. My mom said you might be having people over. I stepped aside. She walked in like the floor might crumble under her. I hope it's okay I came. It's more than okay, I said, and I meant it. We sat, ate. She barely touched her food, just poked at the macaroni and complimented the cobbler even though she hadn't tried it. But her eyes kept drifting around the apartment, pausing on photos, books, the folded quilt, at the edge of the couch. Finally, she asked, "Did you really write your story down?" I nodded. She hesitated. "Can I read it?" I blinked. Then went to the back room, pulled out the red folder, and handed it to her. She didn't open it. She held it like it might be sacred. Or dangerous. Maybe both. At 1:45, Roy showed up. No announcement. No knock. He just opened the door and stood in the hallway, hands shoved deep into the pockets of his coat. He looked tired. Older than he should have, but also clearer. Like something inside him had finally been named. He didn't speak right away, just took off his shoes, a gesture from childhood. Then sat across from me. "Thank you for the letter," I said softly. He nodded. "I wasn't going to come," he admitted. "I know. But something Micah said stuck with me." "What was that?" "He asked me why I was mad at someone who was dying when I still hadn't said I was sorry." I waited. "Are you?" "Yes," he said, "for all of it, for more than I know how to name." That was enough. I didn't need a list, just a door left ajar. At 2:30, Camille arrived. She was the last. She always had been. Last to speak, last to break, last to forgive. She brought lemonade and deviled eggs. Didn't say hello. Didn't make eye contact. Just placed the tray on the table and sat next to Joni. 10 full minutes passed in silence. Then she looked up and said, barely above a whisper, "You're still my mother." The words hit like thunder under my skin. I didn't answer. Couldn't. I just reached across the table and placed my hand over hers. She didn't pull away. We ate together, all 5 of us. No one said much. No one had to. The food spoke louder than words ever could. After the plates were cleared and the kitchen cleaned, we sat in the living room. I handed each of them an envelope, plain white, sealed. Inside, a letter written to each of them in my own handwriting. Not a will, not instructions. Just truth. Stories. Moments they forgot but I had kept alive. Their first steps. Their favorite lullabies. The day Camille scraped her knee and asked if blood meant she was dying. The time Royce stayed up all night because a baby bird fell out of a nest. memories that only I remembered. Because that's what mothers do. We remember, even when we're erased. No one opened their letter right away. They held them like relics, like something holy, and I hoped in that moment that maybe, just maybe, they would carry me with them in more than memory. When they left, it was quiet, not cold, not final, just quiet, like a curtain gently falling at the end of a play. Tanya stayed behind, helped me wash the last dish. Then she hugged me. Not tightly, just long enough to say everything in words wouldn't dare. "You did it," she whispered. I nodded. I did. That night, I sat in my chair, tea cooling on the table, blanket tucked around my legs, and I wrote my final journal entry. They came, not for money, not for property, not even out of guilt. They came for me, and maybe that's all I ever wanted. I woke up to light, not blinding, not soft, just there. It slipped through the curtains in long golden stripes, warm and steady, like the day itself had come to sit beside me and say, "It's time." My bones were heavy, my breath shallow but not painful. There was no pain, only weight, like my body had decided finally to exhale. I didn't get up right away. I didn't need to. I looked around the room at the framed photos, the folded quilts, the half-read Bible beside my bed, at the sunlight on the rug, at the glass of water Tanya had left the night before, still full. I'd stopped feeling hungry 2 days ago, stopped needing much of anything, except peace. And I had it. Tanya came at noon. She let herself in as I asked. She didn't call out this time. She didn't knock. She just appeared in the doorway like she already knew. "Good morning," she whispered, though it was well past. I smiled, barely. She sat beside the bed and took my hand. "I'll stay," she said, "until it's done." I closed my eyes, not from exhaustion, from acceptance. The phone rang once around 2. Tanya answered. It was Camille. They'd all decided to come by tomorrow. She asked if I needed anything. Tanya told her gently that she should come today. Camille didn't speak for a moment, then said, "We're on our way." They arrived just after sunset. Royce, Camille, Joni, Micah. No shouting, no ceremony, just coats shuffled off, soft footsteps and silent presence. They didn't speak much, but they sat beside me, read from my journal aloud, told old stories in hushed voices. Royce made tea and brought it in a cup I couldn't lift. Camille placed a cool cloth on my forehead and brushed my hair back like I was 5 again. And the children, now nearly grown, held my hands without flinching. I don't remember what we said last, but I remember what I felt. I was not alone, and I was not forgotten. That night, I slept. Real sleep. Deep, full, still. In the morning, Tanya found me in the same place, eyes closed, mouth peaceful, hands folded neatly on my lap as if I'd tucked them there myself. The journal was open beside me, the last page blank, except for 5 words written in shaky ink. I remember. I am loved. They buried me near Jack. Small service. No frills. Just hymns and sunlight and a dozen hands that helped carry the weight I had finally laid down. Tanya read my story at the pulpit. Camille cried. Royce spoke. Micah played a song on the guitar, and Joni placed the red folder, the one I'd written my life into, at the foot of the stone. Weeks passed, then months, and every now and then someone would say, "Do you remember Clara?" And someone else would nod and say, "She never stopped trying." Thank you for walking this story with me. If it touched you, even a little, please leave a comment. Let me know what part stayed with you most. I read every single word. I wish you strength, peace, and dignity in your family, your life, and your heart. May we all learn from the quiet courage of those who never stopped trying, even when no one was watching. And may we never forget that it's never too late to say, "I love you, I forgive you, I choose peace." Take care of yourself, and until next time, be well.